And then I will introduce Rebecca. So welcome everybody to this session on living in your body as an adoptee with Rebecca Berg. Rebecca Berg, MSRDN, is a registered dietitian specializing in transforming food and body relationships to support healing from disordered eating and body image concerns. She's passionate about helping adult and teen adoptees. She explores food behavior with curiosity and compassion. Rebecca combines her lived experience as a domestic infant adoptee and human fully recovered from her own eating struggles to support and guide her clients. So welcome everybody, and I will pass over to Rebecca. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruby, and thank you everyone for spending your afternoon with me. This is Living in Your Body as an Adoptee, Rewriting Your Body Image Story. And I'm really excited to spend time with all of you talking about this very important topic that doesn't always get discussed that openly. So I'm just grateful that we get to share space together today. Okay, so if you haven't already, I would encourage you to add your pronouns to your Zoom name, just so that we all know how to refer to one another if we start talking in the chat. And I think this is correct, Ruby. You can let me know, but if you don't need to keep your camera on unless you're requesting CEUs. So I want everyone to be as comfortable as possible. And we are going to be spending an hour and a half together. So please take care of yourself. If you need to get up, stretch, walk, eat, fidget toy, whatever you need, just please make yourself comfortable. And grab a journal or a sheet of paper, because I did try to include a lot of activities today. But of course, you're not required to do any of them. If you're not feeling it, you can always come back to it, or you can just leave it, take what you need, and leave the rest. And you're welcome to ask me questions as we go along in the chat. I'll also be using another platform other than Google Slides called Mentimeter for us to communicate, and I'll show you that in a sec. But I'm just welcoming, everyone. I'm welcoming you to ask your questions at any point. You don't need to wait till the end, although I did leave time at the end for questions. Okay, so hello. Starting off with who am I? As Ruby said, I am a private practice eating disorder dietitian. I'm based out of Los Angeles, California, but I do see clients and adoptees all across the country. I am a multi-passionate entrepreneur. I do a couple of other things other than being a dietitian. I'm very creative. I've got an Etsy store. And I think it's always important when I'm talking in an adoptee-centric space to talk about a little bit about my identities and my story, just because I think that something like body image is so personal and it's also intersectional. And so when I'm giving this presentation, obviously it's coming through my own lens, not only my own lived experience, but as a clinician, I learned through that lens that I'm looking through. So I am a domestic. Oh, I'm hearing someone else. Let's see. Okay. Susan, I just muted you.
You come in unmuted, sorry.
Oh, yeah, no problem. I am a domestic infant adoptee, and this is me on the right. I was born very, very early, and I was 2 pounds, 3 ounces, and spent about 8 weeks in the NICU. And after that, I was adopted into a white Jewish family and had a closed adoption. And in addition to that, I identify as white, bisexual, cisgender. I'm Jewish. I live in a straight-sized body. And for those who may not be as familiar with that terminology, that just means that I have the privilege of being able to walk into most clothing stores and find clothing that fits me, because I'm within the range of like normal sized or straight sized, and had an upper middle class upbringing. And so all of those things I find important to name as a part of this presentation, because body image is so intersectional and so personal. And I bring that here today so to let you know that my experiences are not going to be the same as your experiences, and that because of my own privileges, you know, I may not have experienced the same level of oppression that other people have. And I like to name that up front because I want everyone to know that that's really important to me as a clinician and just like as a fellow human navigating this world and having a body. Okay. So what we're going to do today, we're going to talk about body image, what it is, how do we conceptualize it, and then the factors that I think are pretty specific to being an adoptee and how that affects our relationship with our body, the basics of body trust, which is a particular modality that I use in my work, and how we can actually move towards healing in our body. And then what does it look like to have collaborative treatment when it comes to healing your body image, between a dietitian and a therapist, and the other modalities and ways that you can move towards healing. So we always got to get our objectives out of the way. I'm loving this. There's so many people coming in from the waiting room. Okay. So I'm going to start off with body image in general. And this is where I'm going to switch to my other platform called Mentimeter. So let's see if can someone just give me a thumbs up that you can see that I switched to a different platform? Can you see this?
Yeah, we
I
see
can't.
your, yeah. Yes.
Okay, great. So what I want to know from all of you before I get into my clinical definition and like lived experience definition of body image is, what does body image mean to you? So two things you can do. You can go to menti.com and type in this code that's at the top of the screen, 73624303, or hover your phone over this QR code, and then it's going to give you a space to add some words. So I would just love if you're, you know, open to it, if you could share with us what body image means to you, and I'll give everyone like 30 seconds to a minute. And it's going to create a word cloud, which is really cool. Hmm. Thank you all for sharing these bits and pieces of you. Yeah, so I can, based on what I'm seeing here is the theme of not only how we view ourselves, but how others view us, and just the interplay between those things, and the difference between feeling maybe positive, the positive words like beautiful, and some of the more intense and distressing words that I see here, like ashamed and self-cruelty. All of these things are valid. They're all right, even though there's no right or wrong. Body image is so personal, and I really appreciate everyone sharing. So we're going to come back to this and continue to look at how this is shaped by not only our experiences as adoptees, but just our experiences as humans. Okay. So going back to the definition, body image is very hard to define, but I'm more of a visual thinker, so I like to think about it in these 4 different areas. The first is perception. So that's what we see when we look at our bodies, whether we're looking at it, you know, if I were to be sitting here looking at it, or if I'm looking at the mirror. And then of course, how we think others see our bodies when they come into contact with us. The second domain is affect, and that means how we feel about our bodies. So whether the emotions that come up are, I'm feeling very disgusted or I'm feeling proud, those kinds of things are ever changing on a daily basis. And that also encompasses your sense of embodiment. And what I mean when I say embodiment is the sensations that you feel in your body. So whether you feel constricted or tight or fuzzy and expansive and alive, that those types of experiences also affect your experience of body image. Cognition is your thinking mind. So what kind of thoughts do you have about your body? And also, what thoughts do you think others have about your body? And lastly, behavior. As a registered dietitian, I do focus a lot on body image behaviors, and I see that falling into two categories for the sake of making it a little more easy to explain. One is moving towards your body, and one is moving away from your body. So in moving towards, that's things like having a lot of obsessive thoughts or behaviors around your body. Maybe that's body checking or constantly reevaluating yourself in the mirror, checking your weight on the scale. And then body avoidance behaviors would be things like dressing in baggier clothing so that you don't have to acknowledge the shape or size of your body, or even avoiding social events because of the way that you feel about your body. Or one other body avoidance behavior that I see a lot is actually removing mirrors and reflective surfaces from your living space or your home so that you don't have to confront yourself in that way. So that's how I define it. And there are lots of different aspects of this, and it's not a perfect, definition or a perfect square, but I think it's important to set that foundation of all the different puzzle pieces that go into body image. And of course, one thing that I think is possibly most important in this whole picture is that body image is contextual based on the moment in history that you are living in. Some bodies are vilified and some are praised, and that depends on literally your time and place, because we know that beauty standards are always evolving. And if your body conforms to societal ideals, then you may be less likely to experience oppression, and it may be easier to improve your body image. So speaking, as a person who is not a person of color, as a white woman, my body more easily fits societal standards. So that may mean that I have less hurdles to overcome than someone who is living in a larger body or who is a person of color living in a larger body. And that cultural and historical context is also really important when we're talking about body image. So how do we define negative body image? I think we started here because the topic of this whole presentation is rewriting your body image story. So in that, I'm assuming that many of us are struggling in our bodies or struggling with our body image. And so when we think about what that looks like in our daily lives, what that could look like is a distorted perception of our appearance. So not being able to really understand what we truly look like, although, it is subjective at the end of the day. Feeling inadequate about our body, criticizing our body. Once again, those behaviors moving toward or away from our body, obsession over food, weight, diet, exercise, linking your eating behaviors and your body behaviors to feelings of guilt or shame, or even feeling guilt and shame and depression and then taking that out on your body, as well as comparing your body to other people and feeling the need to change certain aspects of your body, whether that's your size or your weight or something about your face or a body part. All of those things lead to just an overall global experience of body distress. And that's how I think about negative body image and how I explore it with my clients. Oftentimes, negative body image the way that it's discussed in the media, I think can be very reductive, and that it boils it down to, oh, well, someone doesn't like the way they look because they're vain or they're self-centered, or there's just a need for control or something like that. But we know from lived experience and from our own from lived experience and research and just like everything in the world, that that's a very, very narrow view of it, and often negative body image, a focus on weight or shape or size or feeling fat or feeling too big, or you're taking up too much space, is actually a sign that there's something deeper going on. And that could be expressing self-hatred, or literally the emotions that you're feeling in your body getting stuck. I know this isn't specifically a talk about eating disorders, but body image distress and eating disorders do go hand in hand. So oftentimes when I talk about eating disorders, I say that they're emotion converters. And what I mean by that is when we're young and we experience a distressing event or an overwhelming emotion, we ideally would be able to receive care and mirroring from someone who could help us process that experience and be with us to feel that and move through it and receive care. But when we don't get those skills and those tools, and we're not met with that when we go through something distressing or when we feel something overwhelming like shame, many of us are kind of forced to find an alternative way to deal with that hurt. And it comes out in something like body image distress, in hating our body or wanting to change it, feeling negatively about it. And that is something that many people struggle with throughout their lives because they haven't had the skills to handle the distress and the overwhelming emotions that come up. Another aspect of the reason why negative body image kind of works is the internalized beliefs from messages that we get from our family, our peers, our media, and that goes back to that point about it being a time in a moment in culture, a moment in history, and of course coping for unresolved experiences, attachments, traumas, and lastly reenactment. Like if we, as many of us do, struggle with PTSD, the body can actually become the playing field for us to take out those experiences, those somatic experiences that we're having from unresolved trauma, and it just continues to be a cycle that we're playing out with our body being the object that we're playing it onto. And yeah, I see food addiction that someone added in there. Yeah, I mean, while I'm focusing on body image today, all of this overlaps and intersects with our relationship with food because they go hand in hand. Our experience of eating is an experience of being in your body, or experience of eating is an experience of trying to get away from being in your body. So definitely, Bianca, I see that come up a lot. Okay, so the next part of the presentation that we're going to go into is really about the things that I see are unique to the adoptee experience that leave us more vulnerable to body image distress. The first risk factor is separation from our biological mirrors. I'm sure, we've all been hearing about this through many of the presentations that have come before, but when we are lacking in that genetic mirroring from the people that look like us, we are left in this sort of bewildered and disoriented state, which can go on for some of us for all of our lives if we never receive that connection and that mirroring. And that leads to two things: mirror hunger and disembodiment. Mirror hunger is the experience of yearning and longing to see someone that looks like you. And for some humans and adoptees, that can manifest in more obsessive thoughts and behaviors about body and appearance. And if that's what you're experiencing, you may not even have related it back to your experience as an adoptee. But I'll speak to my personal experience. When I was a teenager, I spent a lot of time looking in the mirror and taking pictures of myself, trying to see something, which I really wasn't conscious of what I was looking for. Um, and I remember my dad saying, stop doing that. You don't want to turn into a narcissist. You don't want to be narcissistic. But now I really look at that as a manifestation of my yearning to see something when I looked in the mirror, as opposed to what was happening, which was feeling like I'm not connecting to my own reflection. I'm not feeling embodied, and ultimately, like, I think, contributed to my own distress. Okay. The next risk factor that I think is really important is maternal separation and inconsistent connection with caregivers. So, many of us have experiences of being in orphanages or in foster care, moving around to different foster homes. In my personal experience, I know that I was in the NICU for over 7 weeks, and that has its own set of disconnection and uncomfortable challenges. But really, what that is a very severe attachment disruption. Even if we were, taken from our biological mothers and immediately placed into the hands of our adoptive families, we still have a very severe attachment disruption. And that results in misattunement. And so what I see happening from those early childhood experiences is that oftentimes our current relationships with food and body from early childhood then get played out. Our current relationships mirror what was happening in early childhood. So once again, we're replaying that dance and that relationship, because the relationship that you have with your body and with food, I use that word very intentionally. It is a relationship. So we can get stuck in replaying those patterns, whether that looks like avoiding food because we had avoidant attachment, or whether it's disorganized and it's a little bit of everything. That really comes into play over and over again in the people that I sit with in my office. And of course, it's not a 100% unique experience to people who are adopted. But I do find that early childhood trauma leaves a mark on the body and the relationship with the body, that is more challenging to overcome. And I'll come back to that piece about infant attunement in a sec. Another risk factor that I think is really important is inappropriate body comparisons. Whether that means that your family or your friends is comparing your body to your adoptive family, or comparing your body to your adopted siblings, or even between like different family groups. I think I'll give an example from my own life. My mom used to point out how different our features were. I was very hairy. She had very thin hair. I had a lot of acne and skin issues. She did not struggle with those issues. My eyes are green, and that was something that was constantly pointed out. And so even though those things, my mom was pointing these things out to say like, oh, I love your hair. It's so thick. My hair is so thin. I don't like it. Although I know, her intention was to make me feel good that I had these positive qualities, what that resulted in was me being more aware of my body, in that it was different, it was other, it was not like her body, I was not like my family. And I think, that experience can play out for many of us as negative self-esteem and more hypervigilance around our body, more consciousness around our body. Of course, come from a same race family, so I'm white and my adoptive parents are white. So that level of distress that I feel or felt, I imagine, is nowhere near the experience that someone feels as a transracial adoptee or an intercountry adoptee. Um, so the bottom line is, like, those comparisons that are made, whether the intention is positive or negative, it results in this othering that then gets, once again, played out in our relationships with our body because we don't know how to make sense of those experiences, especially when we're younger. And lastly, systems of oppression, especially systemic racism and sexism. It is an ongoing experience of stress, especially acculturative stress, which is the type of stress that comes with trying to fit into a culture that you are not originally from. And for me, just resonates of, like, trying to fit into a world that you are not, from originally, that you're not meant to fit into, and the suffering that's associated with discrimination that comes from that. And we can see from the research that people who are more oppressed and have more layers of marginalization have an increased risk of vulnerability of developing disordered eating behaviors and negative coping behaviors, which often include negative behaviors that you take out on your own body. Yeah, and Bill said being other, alien even to one's own body. Yes, yes. I believe that to be very true. That disconnection that we feel from an early age means that we don't even feel connected to ourselves. I very, very much believe that adoptees are a marginalized and oppressed group. And I think that we experience this marginalization and oppression at all levels. The first being the internalized oppression that one might experience as, I'm bad, there's something wrong with me. Or, I shouldn't be feeling this way. Adoption is really great. Like, why am I feeling sad, or why am I having these emotions that I can't make sense of? Of course, that also comes up in between us and our other relationships, the microaggressions that we might experience from other people when we tell them that we're adopted or we share our story. And at the macro level, we're talking about things like not having access to our original birth certificates, not having access to our medical records. And on the international level, just the policies and foreign relations that are happening between the United States and other countries. All of these things are taking away our agency and affecting us in all of these layers. And I included this quote here because I think it's really powerful. It's no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society. I think that oftentimes as adoptees, we are forced to adapt to these situations, which are some might call unnatural. And when we are forced to adapt, then we use these different behaviors to cope with what's coming up for us. I'm sure throughout this weekend that you've seen different people talk about the 7 core issues in adoption. And the reason why I include it here is because a lot of these themes I see played out in people's relationships with their own body. And I'm not going to go through all of them here because I could list out tons of different behaviors and experiences. But just to give an example, right? When you experience a profound loss and that loss is not recognized, it can be internalized as rejection. And if we haven't processed or integrated our experience of our early trauma and our adoption trauma, that rejection can turn into internalized rejection towards our own bodies and ourselves, which might look like rejecting ourselves through wanting to change something about our appearance, whether that's losing weight or getting plastic surgery. Similarly, feeling guilt and shame, right? Feeling guilty and shameful for having needs, for having a body that has needs. I think at the very basic level, many people that I work with struggle with stopping and making time to eat, and also stopping and making time to go to the bathroom. Just that experience of not being fully embodied, not being present with your body, and then when you do recognize that you have a need, feeling like it's bad for having needs. So all of these aspects of adoption really can go into like the very granular things that we see in body image issues, which I think is really fascinating. And to no surprise, in the research, some comments, like when we talk about the common psychological issues that adoptees face, the two that I've highlighted here that are pertinent are having an incomplete sense of self and having body image issues. And I find it curious that those two things are separated, because body image, how can we can't be separated from our body, because we live in our bodies, although psychologically many of us are from that early trauma. But that those two things, that incomplete sense of self, the identity issues, and the difficulty with rejection and abandonment, once again, just reiterating that all of these deeper things get played out in our relationship with our body. So even if someone says, you know, I don't like my body is too blank, I'm often digging under the surface to see what's there, because we're going all the way back to the beginning here. Winnicott said there is no such thing as a baby. And I think many of us would agree, because when we're born, we have to be in a relationship with our mothers. And that attunement is really, that attunement is really paramount, and it's life-giving. It is our first experience of trust in our body and trust in the body, with our body in proximity to another person's body. And it allows us as babies to really distinguish between what's inside of ourselves and what's outside of ourselves. And that process takes time, because in the beginning, we can't see ourselves as separate from our moms. But as we grow in that experience, we're able to build trust in our bodies, to build trust in ourselves, and understand boundaries. And that's so, so important. However, when that experience is disrupted, as it is when we are adopted, there is a lot of anxiety and fear and mistrust and feelings of chaos that emerge, and that results in an inability for us to understand ourselves, to really conceptualize ourselves, and we begin to just lose the ability to recognize and attune to our own needs, because our needs were not met in those early days, months, and years. And we then limit, ignore, and disconnect and lose touch with them. What the process that happens when we lose touch with our own needs is that we become very vulnerable to enmeshment, which is being very entangled with another person's needs and emotions, and also very vulnerable to looking to outside sources to understand what our true self is and to gain acceptance and values from others. And those outside sources could be, the values of our adoptive families, the media, our peers, our first important romantic relationships. All of those things are players that can then insert themselves into our relationship with our body. And unfortunately, once again, it goes back to eating behaviors. those early experiences can cause us to be over or under focused around food and leave us more susceptible to addiction and eating disorders. Ultimately, I believe that adoption is body disconnection, because we are having this experience of disruption and erasure from a very, very early age. We don't have that genetic mirroring. We don't have medical history. We don't have access to our body lineage. And we live with this pre-verbal trauma and these implicit memories that we don't necessarily have words for, have access to. And that makes it very hard to be present in our bodies because all of that is very overwhelming. I think this quote from Sunny Reed sums it up really beautifully. There's this feeling of being very divorced from my infant body. I don't feel like the baby I'm looking at in those pictures is actually me. And she is certainly not alone in that experience. As Bill said, I know many people look at their reflection or look at their body and feel numb or disconnected or alien, like the person that they're looking at couldn't possibly be themselves. So all of that was intense. There is a lot that goes into our relationship with our bodies, and as adoptees, we, I believe, are starting off with less than maybe non-adoptees in that it's harder to move towards healing in our relationship with our body because we have a lot of obstacles and hurdles to overcome. But there's hope. We're going to do it anyway. The first thing that I think is important is to redefine what healing looks like and feels like. Because in our culture and in our society, the things that I've listed here are commonplace. Oh, I've been so bad because I ate XYZ, or I need to go for a walk because I had a piece of cake, or I can't wait to burn off that Thanksgiving dinner with the turkey trot later. These are just examples of things that you're going to encounter every single day of your life, which means that doing body image healing work, I believe, is number one, radical. You are a fish swimming upstream because society is going to continue to do these things. There is going to be continued bonding over weight loss strategies, beauty ideals that are very narrow. And that makes it hard to move forward. And I name this intentionally because it's so important to seek out community when you're doing this work, because doing it alone can be very isolating and challenging because a lot of people will still believe these dominant narratives and still want to live by them, which is totally fine. Everyone has autonomy to do that. But when you're stepping out of that dominant narrative, it is brave and hard work, and you need people alongside of you to do it with you. So when someone comes to me with negative experiences of being in their body, and I talk about doing body image work, oftentimes it's a very abstract experience. Like, what even is that? So I like to talk about what the work looks like. And the first thing is building awareness of your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, because you can't really start to change or modify something if you don't know what's actually going on. So oftentimes that looks like getting more acquainted with the kinds of thoughts that you're having on a daily basis and the kinds of behaviors that are adding to distress or discomfort in your life. The second thing is taking care of your body on days when you're feeling negative about your body. When you have distressing body image experiences, and then you respond to that distress with something like speaking negatively towards yourself, or avoiding going out with your friends, or avoiding a certain conversation or behavior, that process is reinforcing itself. So you're kind of telling your brain at that point, okay, when I have this negative feeling or experience, then I need to do this thing to resolve it. And the thing that you're doing often is what's adding to more distress. So we have to kind of renegotiate what it looks like to care and care for our bodies and respect our bodies, even when we have negative emotions. And I don't like to label emotions negative or positive, but what I mean is even when we have these more overwhelming, distressing emotions. The third thing is taking actions that align with our values versus reacting to moments of distress. A lot of body image work is values work, and building in the presence and space and awareness to be able to pause and say, okay, what's important to me in this world, in this life, is respect and compassion. And if I were to do XYZ behavior right now, that wouldn't be acting on my values. So it's kind of taking the time to understand that we have agency over these choices that we make. The next thing is understanding your body differently. Body image work is, unfortunately, a lot about unlearning the things that you've learned. So I say this example here is your body as a home versus your body as a billboard. For many of us, our bodies are seen as like marketing towards other people of what we care about or what's important to us, whether that's our body size or our shape or what clothing we wear. Or even, as an earlier speaker was saying, like our presence and our bodies and our behavior being a reflection of our adoptive parents, almost like a billboard for what they've done and the actions they've taken. So we need to be kind to ourselves and taking time that it's going to be a process of rewiring our brain and learning how to look at our bodies differently. Body image work is not erasing negative body experiences. It really is building a toolkit and a skill set to be with our changing body, to recognize that our bodies are going to change, they're meant to change, and that as children, we do not get education around this. We do not get skill building around this. And when we don't have the tools to manage that experience, or when we were left alone to handle those early experiences on our own, of course it's going to be challenging to do it in adulthood. Of course you're going to need guidance and support and community and handholding. All of this is very, very new, and we have to work to move gently and kindly with ourselves as we're trying to be in relationship with ourselves differently. And it really is a skill set and a toolkit that we can build, and muscle that we can strengthen. Thank you, Anne. I'm really glad that it's helpful for you. Okay. One thing I want to name is that body image exists on a spectrum. And the thing that's important is that sometimes when body image comes up, I feel like I've said body image so many times. I wish there was another word. Sometimes when this comes up, people might assume that I'm talking about having a body positivity or body self-love, that we're working on moving towards that. And that is not necessarily the case. Body image exists on a spectrum, and there is a wide range of ways that you can feel towards your body. I don't presume to know where you want to go. I don't presume that every person wants to end at body appreciation, that you want to love and appreciate your body and feel compassion towards it. For some people, that might not be realistic, especially if you live in a body that is outside of the societal norm, whether that means that you live in a larger body, you are a person of color, your body is disabled. There are things that make living in a body very hard. So I'm going to go through these different categories so that everyone's aware. Body hatred is what it sounds like, feeling intense feelings of self-hatred towards your body. The next part on the spectrum is body acknowledgement. Body acknowledgement is really important if we are stuck in avoidance or dissociation or pretending that our body doesn't exist, which many of us do very naturally to avoid the distressing experiences and the distressing sensations that we're feeling in our body. But as I said earlier, we can't develop kindness and compassion towards something that we don't acknowledge exists. So body acknowledgement is moving towards the understanding that you have a body and you live in a body. And that is a very important place to start. Body tolerance is learning to endure body image distress and dissatisfaction without acting on the coping behaviors that you're trying to move away from. So one example of that might be waking up and feeling a negative sensation in your stomach, and then feeling the urge to perhaps check the mirror to see if your stomach has changed or not changed. Body tolerance would mean working to do something else in that moment to manage the distress of that sensation rather than the behavior of checking the mirror, if that's something that's kind of reinforcing that cycle. Body neutrality is the next stop on this, this train, which means understanding that your body is not an accessory. It's about seeing your body as a vessel for your values and your energy and your soul, and that you can treat that vessel, that body, with care, and that it allows you to live your life, and that's it. So body neutrality really focuses on bodily function and not appearance or body size, not whether it's good or bad, because no body size is good or bad, but focusing on the functions of your body. And that could sound like switching your thoughts to, my arms allow me to hug my partner. My skin helps me feel the sunshine. Sometimes people add an air of gratitude to that, like I'm grateful for my arms because they allow me to make this bread. But I don't think that's always necessary. It can just look like acknowledging the ways that your body helps you function and live out your values. The next place that we go is body acceptance, which means interacting with your body in the moment, welcoming your emotional experience, and approaching all of your aspects of your experience of being a human with a body with curiosity and without judgment, which, once again, I just want to say is really, really hard to do in our society and very hard to do as an adoptee. So I don't expect every person to get to body acceptance or body appreciation, which is when we feel deep love and compassion and appreciation for our body on a regular basis. And of course, we're not always going to feel this way every single day because our bodies are ever changing and growing. And so throughout seasons of your life, you may move between different experiences of your body on this spectrum, but there may be one that you spend more time in than others. So now I'm really curious, since we just talked about this body image spectrum, if we could go back into our Mentimeter and just share where you are on the body image spectrum today. And it might be different than where you were yesterday or where you are tomorrow, but that's okay. There's no right or wrong. Look at this beautiful rainbow, this diversity. It's so cool to see how we can all have such I mean, obviously, we all have such different experiences in our body, but even today, we're all living in a different space. I'll give a couple more seconds in case anyone else wants to respond. Okay, looks like a bunch of us are hanging out in body neutrality. It is what it is. We live in our bodies. Thank you all for sharing. I really appreciate that. That's cool to see where we're all living today. And Timothy, I see your question, and I would love to come back to it. I just want you to know that I see it, and I really appreciate you sharing. I'm going to come back to it. Okay. Excuse me while I try to figure out how to full screen this so that I can get back to my other presentation. There we go. Okay. So one aspect of working towards moving ourselves in a different direction in our relationship with our body is shifting our thoughts. Because oftentimes we have a thought pattern that's pretty ingrained and automatic that comes up when we think about our body. And so that could be naming negative things about your body, whether you're, ugly or gross or insert adjective of your choosing, or that you don't look like them, or that you wish you were something else. I am not going to pretend like affirmations are the end all be all of healing work. And I am not a clinician that says that you should write all of these down and put them on your mirror and repeat them to yourself. That being said, I do think there is a time and place for working with like replacement thoughts and statements, because sometimes we don't even know that there is an alternate way of thinking because we've never entertained what that could sound like. And that's why I find it helpful to lean on things that emphasize the process of this work. I am choosing to play in the gray. I am learning how to feel comfortable in my body. You can add that phrase, I am learning, to really everything. I am learning to accept myself as I am. I am learning to trust my instincts, even if they're still developing. That acknowledgement that you're always in process, because this is a relationship. It's not static. It's ever changing. Other phrases that you might find helpful are, I don't need to change my body to take care of my body. My body has wisdom. And of course, as adoptees, there's this deeper layer because we were disconnected from our body lineage. I come from my people, even if I don't know a lot about them yet, or I look like my people, even if I don't know a lot about them yet. These are things that can help us to feel more grounded in the moment and help us cope with these feelings of distress or overwhelm or shame, from the cognitive perspective, from the top-down perspective for those clinicians in the room. Okay. Oftentimes, when I work with clients with body image struggles, this may be the first time that they've talked about this with somebody, and they may have never been able to name some of the experiences that they're going through. Same thing with adoption, right? We just don't know if, and no one's ever asked, it might not have never come up. So I would love to get a little interactive here with everyone and take some time for us to pause and reflect, maybe 5 minutes or so that we can explore our body story together. I'm offering these prompts for everyone, and you can take whatever feels good or leave the rest. You can answer the question on the previous slide if you want. I'll read them out loud for you. What has come between you and being at home in your body? What do you wish the world understood about your body? How did you lose body trust? And if your body wrote you a letter, what would it say? So I'm going to leave this slide up here for everyone to look at and to take about 4 minutes or so to jot down your thoughts. And if you don't want to do that, that's okay too. You can go to the bathroom. You can have some water. Susan has a question.
Oh,
Yes, Susan.
I just want to answer the question when it's time.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Thank you for volunteering already. I'm going to give everyone about 1 more minute and then bring us all back together. Okay. So I'm inviting everyone to come back here, to re-enter our shared space. And of course, I was going to ask if anyone would like to share. And Susan, you said that you would like to share. So
I would love to share. I have to tell you something funny. I was trying to get into another workshop because I didn't think body image had anything to do with me. And there was another yesterday. It was just a phenomenal. The woman told her story, and this is right up there. And it's funny. I'm thin. I've always been thin my whole life. Thin, flat chested, not anymore, but just always skinny kid, nervous. And I always wear a lot of clothes. And when I joined AA, I didn't want anybody touching me. My big thing is touching. I don't want you touching me or hugging me. I want you to stay away. I've always had like dogs around me or lots of stuff so you don't get close to me. Anyway, it's been fascinating listening to you. But my thing is, I never look in the mirror. I don't even know if my clothes match or my hair. I never, ever look in the mirror, except every once in a while I'll be walking by a window. And then I'm like, oh, shoot, I should have worn something different. I have a hard time if somebody notices me. And my birth dad, when he first met me, asked me if I was molested. I don't think I was, but I don't like any attention. Like, therefore, I was dressed down or look like I am my friend calls me like a hippie girl. But I hate any kind of attention. So if I wear a dress or something and somebody compliments me, I'm very embarrassed if someone thinks that I'm pretty. That's just somehow to me, because I was growing up, it was important how we looked, what people thought of us. So in high school, I was the homecoming cheerleader of the year, my class. And then after I had a kind of mental breakdown when my mom read my diary and asked me to break up with this guy, which is where I should have found you guys. I then went the other way. It was like, I just wanted to be myself. So I just wore what I wanted to wear and didn't do my hair. And I've stayed that way. Shoot, no, sorry. I got a dog and I just bought chicken. So lastly,
I just want to make sure that there's time if anyone else
so I guess what I'm amazed at is that my body would tell me to love itself. And I think that's how people get sick. And I've just developed shingles all over my left side of my head, which is stress. And I have a stomach problem all the time, which also comes, I've had it since I was a baby. I've had, what is that? Where you have colic. So this fascinating topic. I have a lot to think about, and thank you so much. Oh, and I was an exercise bulimic, where I used to run and then eat whatever I wanted. So I guess body image really does apply to me.
Well, I appreciate you joining and for sharing, because I think your experience is very emblematic of the experience of being an adoptee and having a body. I would say for a lot of people that I've met and worked with, it's tumultuous. There's so many things that go into our experience of our body, and it's just ever changing and has so much to do with that early attachment trauma and disconnection, but also with the culture and the environment that we're in. So thank you.
Thank you.
Would anyone else like to share anything about what they reflected on? No worries if not, I can keep going. Maria said, in my notes, I wrote the power of touch on our bodies too, and I'm thinking a lot about what you shared, Susan. Thank you. Yeah, Touch is really, really, really powerful. Yes, Ruby.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I did the last one, the letter to me from my body, and it was super powerful. Like, I mean, I appreciated the kind of minute to come back because it took me really deep into a long story and just, very, very quickly, like there are a few, like basically what I was telling myself was like, okay, when it's extreme, I notice like illness or pregnancy or menopause. Those are moments where it's like easier to be in my body because it's sending me massive messages, but the rest of the time I've ignored it completely. Just giving voice in a letter was super powerful. So thank you.
Oh, I'm so glad. Yeah, that is a very, very important and powerful prompt that I share with the majority of my clients. And so if that's a prompt that you didn't choose today, I would encourage you to go back to it. There's so much richness here that I can't capture in 5 minutes. It's oftentimes, like you said, Ruby, we're just not in conversation with our bodies in this way. Yes, Marcy.
Yeah, I'll share. So I reflected on what has come between you and being at home in your body. And for me, it's just absolutely adoption, like just being separated from biological family and having no genetic mirrors, and even the concept of like um coming from another human, like just the fact that I would share genetic material with someone else, and that, I have a biological mother and I am in reunion, but it's even gotten in the way of our relationship, just not being able to connect the dots between this is the woman that actually carried me, birthed me, that I share 50% of my genetic material with. Like, having that connection severed at birth, for me, I mean, it's just like, how do you then feel at home in your body? It's just so rudimentary. At this stage, I do feel much better about it, but it's taken over 50 years. So,
Hmm. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, you're speaking to what I was trying to emphasize in the beginning, is that it is so much more difficult to feel content and comfortable in our bodies when we start off with that immediate experience of disconnection. And that's why I want all of us to be as kind and compassionate towards ourselves in this body image journey, because we can definitely work to feel more comfortable and content, but I don't want to promise that we're going to feel loving when we start off with this really traumatic experience like you were speaking to. So thank you everyone for taking the time to reflect and to share. These slides will be available. So if you ever want to come back to these prompts, I really encourage it, even to come back to the same ones over and over again, because your relationship with the answer and your body is going to change all the time. Body trust is one of the modalities that I use in my work, and I'm just going to highlight a couple of the things that we can utilize here in our daily lives to start to rebuild that body trust when it's been broken. One is externalizing the shame, the blame, and the bias. And I've been trying to do that throughout this whole presentation by naming the early attachment trauma and how that environment and those environmental aspects that have a huge impact on our relationship with our body, and that is not of our choosing, and that is not our fault. And even though we may have been living for so long blaming ourselves and blaming our bodies, it can be very helpful to externalize that, as well as saying like the culture and the society that I live in is toxic because of all of these ways. The second thing is looking and listening to yourself with kindness and curiosity. And that means speaking to yourself differently, learning to notice when you're speaking to yourself from a harsh inner critic part, and seeing if you can turn towards yourself in a different way with kindness and compassion. And of course, focusing on small, consistent acts to rebuild trust, which I know is very vague, but what I mean by that is taking care of yourself in drinking water, moving your body in, if that feels good, feeding yourself, buying clothing that feels good for your body, going to the doctor for regular checkups, noticing when you're tired and you need to rest, and resting in response to that bodily signal. Those are the small things that we do on a daily basis that start to rebuild that relationship. I'm wondering if anyone has heard of health at every size. I don't have a Mentimeter for that, but if you have, I would love to just hear in the chat if anyone knows about this or not, because I'm going to go into it. Yes, no, whoa. Here we go. Okay. Okay, we got some yeses, some nos. Timothy, so can I get a DQ Blizzard tonight without guilt? Well, certainly I can't answer that for you because I don't know the inner workings of your mind. I would say, as a dietitian, of course, there's nothing to be guilty about, but I can't predict whether or not you're going to be guilty. Okay, so some yeses and some nos. That's very helpful. Health at every size is a framework of care that I use when I'm working with my clients, and it's another way to unlearn some of the things that we've learned about health in our bodies, and to start looking at it differently through another lens. It posits that healthcare is a human right for people of all sizes, including those at the highest end of the size spectrum, that well-being, care, and healing are resources that are both collective and deeply personal. I find that to be so helpful because, especially in America, a lot of our health decisions and our relationship with our body is framed in a way that's individualistic. You need to do more of X and less of Y in your personal life in order to be a healthier person, in order to have a good relationship with your body. But if we look at the social determinants of health, we know that individual behavior is only about a third of that pie. And there's lots of other aspects of our life that are impactful towards our health and our relationship with our body that has nothing to do with anything that we caused. And so can only be worked towards that well-being in relationship with other people and in community. And through the collective, through the changes that we make in terms of health policies and advocacy, and what insurance does or does not cover, or those kinds of things. So taking the onus off of you as an individual for being 100% responsible for your health. And care is fully provided only when free from anti-fat bias and offered with people of all sizes in mind. Of course, I can't presume to know anything about your health or your relationship with your body or your body image status just by looking at your body, and I would never make that assumption. And that's one of the things that is core to health at every size, and I think is helpful to take away from this presentation, that you can't know anything about another person's body. So when you begin to receive information, when you begin to look at other people's bodies as something that you can't know about because you don't know that person, it takes you out of those in the moment judgments that might be coming up. And lastly, health is a socio-political construct that reflects the values of society. Oh, gosh, this is so important because just as you define your own body image healing as your journey is unique and personal to you and only you can define it, health is the same way. Health is not something that is universally agreed upon around the world. It is something that is constructed based on the values that we have at this moment in history and in time. And we can opt in or opt out of that at any time, and we get to define our own journey. And looking through the lens at health at every size, hopefully that this wasn't too complicated or confusing, can really help take us out of some of those automatic assumptions that we have about our own bodies and our own health. So I'm going to touch upon a little bit of a few more skills here, because I'm trying to negotiate, do I want to do another activity or do I want to go through the slides? I think I'm going to go the activity route and try to see if I can leave 5 minutes for 5 minutes for questions. But going back to the skill building, like I said before, all of this is something that we need to learn and practice. And when it comes to being in a state of body tolerance, learning to endure the distress, three things that I think are really helpful are distraction, self-soothing, and mindfulness. And of course, if this might not be new to you because it's often referred in therapy for multiple different things that we're working through, but really it's about choosing different behaviors when maybe the urge is to do something that is more oriented towards self-harm. And I use that word not to mean like clinically self-harm, but like something that is ongoing negative experience for you. So what I'm going to offer to take another couple minutes for us to do is to build a safety menu. And what that means is, those times when you feel kind of unsettled in your body and unsafe in your body, when we start to move into those emotional states, it's actually hard to remember what makes us feel better, what makes us feel more secure and grounded. So this activity really is about creating a menu of options that help you feel safer in your body. Just like when you're thinking about your hunger and you're like, am I snack hungry? Am I meal hungry? I want you to list your options for the times when you feel a little unsafe or insecure, all the way to the times when you feel like you're starving and you're having a really, really intense body image day. This is a very cool activity from The Art of Body Acceptance by Ashley Bennett, and I included this picture here so you can see her menu. But I would love for all of you to take just like 3 minutes and write down some ideas of things that you can put on your own personal menu. That might be physical things like objects that help you feel safe, or things that you like to look at, or things that you like to listen to, people who helps you feel grounded and secure, activities, maybe that's knitting, taking a bath, playing with your pet, communities, maybe you're a part of a Facebook group or a local group of people that help you feel more grounded. We're just going to take like 3 minutes here and write down the things that you might put on your safety menu when you're having a lot of body image distress, and when your thinking mind might go offline and you need a little reassurance. I'm watching my time here, so I'm going to say about 1 more minute to brainstorm things on your safety menu. Okay. This has not been my best time budgeting presentation, and this is the first time that I'm giving this presentation. So unfortunately, I don't think that we have time to discuss some of the things that we've put on our own safety menus, although that was my original intention. If you like the idea of this activity and you want to do more body image work in your own life, I would encourage you to buy this book because Ashley has put together so many creative art-based exercises to help you move through a lot of these themes. This is just one that, you know, you can do in a shorter amount of time, and many of them she suggests giving yourself more time for. And I think it's a really cool resource, and I just hope, yeah, Suzanne, feel free to share in the chat. I'm gonna keep going just so I can leave a couple moments for questions, but if you want to share what's on your safety menu, please, and I invite you to do that in the chat. I want to remind everyone that we do not have control over our body shape or size, because that is up to biology, DNA, physiology, and many other aspects in the social determinants of health that I'm not going to go into right now. But what we do have control over is how we care for ourselves on a daily basis and how we choose to care for and respect our bodies. And body changes are hard. That's very real. But I certainly can't convince you to appreciate or love your body, and I can't change your perception of your body. Only you can do those things with a lot of work and therapy, and ideally working with a therapist and a dietitian. But you can change your daily actions, and sometimes we need to change our actions before our brain starts catching up when we're rewiring it. This is another activity that I wanted to leave you with that I'm not going to go over here, but if you click on this link on the bottom right, it is a way for you to connect more to your values and your strengths that are not connected to the way that your body looks. I'm going to go over this really quickly. I think everyone could benefit from therapy, especially adoptees, because many of us struggle with our body image. But I recognize that that's not accessible to every person. And as I said at the beginning, I'm a registered dietitian, so I do body image work, and ideally I do it in conjunction with a therapist who specializes in body image and other eating concerns, whether we want to call that disordered eating or eating disorders. So here are some of the things that I think we should just watch out for, because body image and eating disorders are a specialized topic. If they start bringing in their own suggestions about how you can change your body, whether that's weight loss medications or surgery or healthy eating plans, or they reassure you that you're not the things that you're feeling or saying, those might be some red flags that you're not with the right provider, because everything here, there's clinical boundaries, ethical boundaries that we're playing with. But these are the things I want you to sort of just keep in mind. Oh, like maybe that's not okay. If I'm saying that I feel disgusting in my body and my therapist is like, oh, you're beautiful, don't worry about that, you have nothing to worry about. Red flag. On the flip side, green flags, the things that I love to see. Your therapist prioritizes self-compassion, self-kindness, and self-respect. They work with you to reduce body checking behaviors and other body avoidance behaviors. They want to make sure that you're clarifying your values, and they're sitting with you in that to help figure out what actions are aligned with your true self and which ones are coming from a place maybe of dysregulation. And they're helping you navigate how to live in the world as a human with a body and cope with weight stigma or anti-fatness or ongoing discrimination, whether that's discrimination because of your race or your sex or your ability or your sexual orientation. Those are the kinds of things that I think are helpful to see in a relationship with a therapist when you're working on body image issues. And you might have all of these things, or you might not. Like I said before, it's not always accessible to everyone to have a therapist and a dietitian and a psychiatrist and a doctor. But we can kind of pick and choose when we're able to figure out the things that are going to work for us. And like I mentioned before, some of the activities that I offered you, you can continue to come back to if you want to reflect on this topic more deeply. Also going to leave you with a whole bunch of books that I love on this theme of bodies and all of the layers of the complexity of body image work. And obviously everyone's going to have the slides, so I'm not going to read all these books. Thank you all for sitting with me today. Once again, I'm Rebecca. I'm a registered dietitian and adoptee. I live in Los Angeles, California. I have a virtual private practice and I do nutrition counseling, consultation, and trainings. And I'm happy to take questions for like a minute or so. I know we have to hop off soon, but I just really appreciate y'all being vulnerable and sitting with me. It's an honor to be able to speak with you.
I just want to apologize. I didn't have a question before.
Oh, that's okay. Thank you all. Thank you for this. Thank you for your kind words. I really appreciate it. And I didn't forget about you, Timothy. I want to come back to your question, but I might need to answer it in an email because it's a little bit of a longer answer. Yes, Bianca.
Hi, Rebecca. Thank you so much for this presentation. It was incredible. You hit on so many things.
Thank you.
I'm plus size, and like when you talked about having negative coping behaviors and kind of relearning different a different toolkit and skill set, that really spoke to me, because I feel like I need kind of new skills to kind of have a better relationship with my body and food. So that really spoke to me. I'm not an adoptee, but my mom's the adoptee, and I feel like kind of her parenting, like kind of when I went through tough stuff as her daughter, I turned to food in a negative way. And so I don't know. I'm trying to unlearn, right, and unpack all that and create new healthy tools, to have a better relationship with food in my body. So I really appreciate this a lot. I don't know. I might reach out to you soon for a consultation with your private practice. So thank you so much.
You're so welcome. Thank you for tuning in. Like it is not easy to rebuild your toolkit and to unlearn the things that may have become negative. So it's brave work that you're doing. I admire you. Keep going. Anyone else want to share or have a question?
I'm just going to find the link for the evaluations. And so just give me a sec to put that in the chat before we miss that, because I don't think we
Okay.
did.
Can I just have a quick comment? Is that okay? Or unless somebody else that hasn't gone?
I don't see any other hands raised, so you're welcome. Please, Susan.
Yeah, you know what I think would have been great is you had so much rich discussion material. It would have been great to hear other people's opinion, because I think that would have been so validating for you too, to hear how we all got so much out of what you had to say and learn from each other. I think it's just a rich environment. You can tell with a lot of people that probably had some great things to say, and you opened it up with just a lot about yourself. So it was interesting. It'd be interesting to hear how other people struggle, since it is and then just to say, I can go years without being in a relationship, but once I get in a relationship, it's like I'm skin starved and all I want is somebody to like pet my face, so to speak. And I think that comes from the mother baby bonding. And I love listening to their heart, and I love them touching my face, and I love looking in their eyes, and it's almost like the baby comes out. So your workshop was really powerful, and I'm sure it could even go deeper. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's a delicate balance to strike between sharing information and creating a safe space where everyone can share their own personal body image struggles and feel seen together. And yeah, I've always played around with the idea of creating an adoptee body image support group. So I think it sounds like that's what you're yearning for, and I really appreciate the
Do
feedback.
it. Do it. I think it'd be great. I'm serious. I
Thank
think
you.
you got something there. I'm not going to do it, of course, but because I'm still in denial. But I think please do it. I think you got something. I think you're on to it.
Noted.
Rebecca, thank you so much again. This was really, really great. It's just
You're
been
so welcome. Thank you, everyone.
And Ruby put the link for the CEU or CE evaluation. I can never get that straight. And I believe I did check the time difference. I believe we are at time, so I guess that will close this out. Yes? Anyone else?
Sounds good. Yeah, obviously want to respect time boundaries. So
Thank you all so much for
have a
coming.
wonderful day.
Okay.
Hey, Jean,
How are you?
do I need to go back off to go back in? Because I do need to test. I'm trying to make sure I can do music and my slides, and I need to test all that.
Sure, if you want to, that's fine.
I need to go back out to come back in, or can I stay?
Yeah, here, why don't I just, okay, it looks like I need to end the prior session. So let's
Okay,
just all
I'll go
go
out.
out and then we'll
Thank you.
restart. All
All
right.
Thanks.